you're looking to cut through the noise and get a real understanding of something fascinating, right? You want those key insights without feeling, buried under a mountain of information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's exactly what we're doing today. We're diving straight into the Houston art scene of 1969, focusing on a really interesting artist, Bob Camblin.
Mm.
This was a significant period for Houston's cultural landscape, and Camblin was right in the thick of it.
And we've got some really rich material to work with here. First, there's an overview document sort of detailing his exhibitions and activities that year.
Right, the 1969.pdf.
Exactly. And then we also have this collection of his own thoughts, Bob Camblin quotes, and other mysteries. Gives you a real glimpse into his perspective.
Precisely. So our mission really is to pull out the most compelling nuggets from these, give you a real feel for Camblin's world in '69, his art, his connections, the ideas shaping his work.
Yeah, aiming for those aha moments of things that stick without it being, overwhelming.
Exactly. Okay, so 1969 in Houston. It sounds like a really pivotal time for art there. And a central figure seems to be Diane David and her gallery.
Oh, definitely. What's fascinating is how the document describes her David gallery as the most influential of his time.
Wow.
Yeah, it really highlights its role in, energizing the whole contemporary art scene there. I mean, it introduced artists like Dorman David, Bob Camblin, obviously, Lucas Johnson, Earl Staley. Quite a list.
So it immediately puts Camblin right in this significant network.
Right in the middle of it.
And he wasn't just, on the edges, was he? His connection was pretty direct.
Very direct. Diane David started representing him in 1969.
Okay.
And he was also in their Stable Work by Stable Artists show in August, September. So yeah, front and center at this key gallery.
That visibility must have been huge, right? Especially in what sounds like a growing scene.
Oh, absolutely. Representation by the influential gallery.
Yeah.
That likely gave him crucial visibility, validation, connections. Everything an artist needs in that kind of environment. It wasn't just a place to hang work. It was sort of defining the conversation locally.
Makes sense. And beyond the gallery, he seems to have been just incredibly active. The sheer variety is really striking.
It really is. I mean,
Yeah.
the overview mentions a public lecture he gave at Rice University.
Art in the 50s and 60s.
Right, for a women's seminar. Then participating in an art auction at St. Thomas University.
The Pacifica Art Auction.
Yeah. Judging a photo contest, leading a happening in Galveston.
A happening, right. That very 60s kind of performance art thing.
Exactly. Often improvisational, participatory, and then exhibiting in 5 different shows on top of all that.
Wow. So definitely not just hidden away in his studio.
Not at all. Deeply engaged. You wonder which of those roles, lecturer, exhibitor, judge, maybe the happening leader, which felt most important to him,
That's a good question. I mean, the lecture suggests he's thinking about art history reflecting.
True.
But being in shows, doing something experimental like a happening, that must have pushed his own creative boundaries more directly, maybe.
Probably. Immediate feedback, different kind of energy.
Let's look at that auction again, the Pacifica Art Auction.
Yeah.
His work was included alongside people like Bob Fowler, described as featuring the finest artists.
Right. So it positions him among the established or up-and-coming figures whose work people wanted for a benefit auction. It's another layer of recognition.
And the Galveston happening, the destruction event too.
Yeah, Earl Staley's recollection connects it to his own sideshow off West Beach and says it involves students from Rice and St. Thomas.
And it pops up later on Camblin's resume, right, as deconstruction event IN2.
Exactly. So this kind of experimental, maybe collaborative, performative work was definitely part of his practice then.
And speaking of Rice University, his ties there seem pretty strong, too. The Art Barn opening, that sounds like a big deal.
Oh, huge.
Right.
The Minnows opened the Art Barn and Media Center in March '69.
Right.
And it quickly became this vital exhibition space, but also, crucially, a studio home for the art faculty.
And Camblin was named as one of those faculty members with studio space.
Explicitly, yeah. Alongside John O'Neill, David Parsons, Joe Tate. It really underscores his institutional connection there.
And he was judging that photography contest at Rice, too.
With Alden Parks, John O'Neill.
Right. So involved in the university's art community in multiple ways. Plus, he had a show at the Allen Center Art Gallery there sometime in '69 as well.
It paints a picture of someone really integrated into that Rice art world.
So with all this activity, what about his actual artistic output? I mean, was he producing a lot?
Well, the document mentions his solo show, Bob Camblin, recent paintings and drawings, at the David Gallery in March and April.
Okay, so recent implies a good amount of new work leading up to that.
Exactly. And his work was starting to get noticed outside Houston, too, wasn't it?
Yeah, that Dallas Museum show, the 18th exhibition of Southwestern prints and drawings.
Right. He had two pieces in that. The Foiled Sorcerer and Time Machine, #8.
Those titles are intriguing. Time Machine #8. Wonder what that looked like.
The sources don't really describe them specifically, unfortunately, but getting into that show was tough.
How so?
Over 400 entries from 7 states, apparently, and they only picked 67 works. So having two pieces selected, that's significant regional recognition.
And it toured.
Yeah, to 10 museums and universities, so that would have really spread his name and his work around.
And around this time, his style was changing, moving towards something more detailed and surreal.
That's what the document indicates, yeah. Highly detailed drawings and watercolors, with bizarre imagery, often in these surreal landscapes.
And mentions of series starting featuring fish and figure four traps.
Figure four traps, yeah. It definitely sounds like his artistic imagination was really sort of taking flight in some new, perhaps unexpected directions.
That feels like quite a shift, maybe, from other things happening in Houston art then. The detail, the surrealism.
It certainly could be. It might suggest he was exploring more internal landscapes, maybe dream imagery, or perhaps it was his way of processing the wild cultural shifts happening.
Speaking of cultural shifts, 1969, you can't ignore Woodstock, can you? And that seems to have hit him quite directly.
Apparently so. The document says he immediately felt that he belonged,
Hmm.
and that this huge counterculture moment led to him growing long hair and a beard. It's a fascinating little detail, connecting his personal style directly to that broader movement.
Yeah, it shows he wasn't just observing the times, he was feeling them, participating in them.
Right, so you have this artist deeply involved in the gallery scene, the university scene, but also very much plugged into the wider cultural frequency of '69.
Let's dig into his own words a bit from that Quotes and Other Mysteries document. Some of these are really thought-provoking.
They really are. They offer such a direct window.
This one jumped out at me. Look into the atom, you get what you need. Look into magic, and you get what you need. Philosophy and art are in both.
Ooh, I like that one. It's this connection he's drawing between science, mysticism, philosophy, art.
Yeah, like finding fundamental truths in all these different places, even ones that seem opposite.
Exactly. It suggests a really holistic view, maybe trying to reconcile those forces. And you can kind of see how that might feed into creating bizarre imagery in, say, a very ordinary-looking landscape.
Yeah.
Finding the magic in the mundane or the science in the magic.
And then there's this. I will stick with common sense and try for the perfectly average view of the universe. I think that will let me enjoy miracles on both sides of science and magic.
Uh-huh. Again, with the balance.
And the nuances of the smear between the whiteness and the blackness. It's like he wants to appreciate the everyday and the extraordinary without getting lost in extremes.
Right. Finding richness in that smear, that in-between space. It's quite poetic, actually.
It is. And this one feels very relevant to what art means to him. Art is not just images. Art for art's sake has become art for life's sake, or art for my sake, or art for survival's sake.
That's a powerful shift, isn't it? Moving beyond just aesthetics.
Yeah, suggesting art is something more essential, more personal, maybe even necessary for him.
And if you think about how active he was exhibiting, teaching, performing, it lines up, doesn't it?
Hmm?
Art seems deeply woven into his way of living and understanding things.
There's also a more abstract one. Step off the train of thought to find the power that is no power, to do the work that is not work, to laugh the true laugh, bending is not bowing.
That sounds almost like Zen koan or something.
Right. It hints at a different way of creating, maybe. Less forced effort, more intuition.
Possibly. Step off the train of thought, like bypassing the usual logical process. Maybe that's how you get to those surreal images we were talking about.
Could be. And laugh the true laugh, seeking authenticity, maybe rejecting superficiality.
That resonates, especially in the art world, perhaps.
Which makes this next one kind of funny, in a dry way. Historians love artistic madness when it isn't alive and well and attending meetings.
Huh. Yeah, that's got a bit of a bite to it.
A little bit of wry commentary, maybe, on how the art world romanticizes artists after the fact, but might find actual living nonconformity a bit inconvenient.
It certainly suggests he was aware of those perceptions, maybe even pushing against them a little.
Yeah.
That tension between the myth of the artist and the reality.
Definitely. And finally, this one about learning. Resist learning. Learn to fail, learn to relax, learn to feel, learn how to really think.
I love that. It's about a different kind of learning, isn't it?
Exactly. Not just absorbing facts, but embracing experimentation, intuition, even failure as part of the process. Very hands-on, very experiential.
Which seems to fit perfectly with an artist who's exploring new styles, doing happenings, shifting towards surrealism. It sounds like his working philosophy.
It really does. We also get a little outside perspective from Roy Fridge, another
Ah,
artist.
yes, his comment.
He mentions being interested in Camblin's Saint Bambola drawing dolls seem to pop up, and Fridge was fascinated by Camblin's stage sets with his boxes and time machines.
Right. Stage sets and time machines. Those words really stick out.
They do. Stage sets makes you think of little narrative worlds, maybe.
Miniatures or constructed scenes, perhaps. And time machines,
Yeah.
especially in the late 60s, with all the change happening.
Mm.
Makes you wonder what that theme meant to him. Progress, escape, memory.
Yeah, really sparks the imagination about what the art actually looked like. And Fridge's comment highlights these specific recurring things, dolls, boxes, time machines that clearly made an impression.
Gives us some concrete motifs to picture amidst the surrealism.
And just one more piece of context from that year. It's mentioned that Rice didn't renew Earl Staley's contract.
Right, and he went on to start an art department over at the University of St. Thomas.
It just adds another layer of change, of movement within the Houston scene itself during that period.
Exactly. It wasn't static. People were moving. Institutions were shifting. It shows the dynamism of the environment Camblin was part of.
So pulling it all together, 1969 really emerges as this incredibly dense, pivotal year for Bob Camblin.
Absolutely.
He's deeply connected to the most influential gallery, deeply connected to Rice University. He's lecturing, exhibiting widely, experimenting with happenings.
While also developing this really unique, surreal visual language.
And personally responding to the big cultural shifts like Woodstock. And his own writings show this fascinating mind grappling with art, life, science, magic.
It's not just a snapshot of a busy artist. It's a picture of someone right in the heart of a vibrant scene, both shaping it and being shaped by it.
This deep dive really shows how much richness you can find just by focusing closely on one year in an artist's life and their surroundings.
It really does. And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? I mean, considering Camblin's embrace of counterculture, his interest in both common sense and magic, how did those seemingly opposite forces really mix together to fuel that surreal, sometimes bizarre imagery that started coming through so strongly in '69?
That's a great question to ponder. What kind of creative alchemy was happening there? It makes you realize how many stories are probably still hidden within just that single dynamic year in Houston.
For sure. Lots to think about.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a fascinating look into Bob Camblin's world in 1969. Hopefully it gives everyone a much richer understanding than just a quick glance.